Give it the slap. Good. Now this hand comes up here and holds it. Okay, now hit your switch to red. Good. Now look down there at your silver target. And look at your silver target. And now you can
Dad,
see.
it's too tight when you hold it.
Okay, sorry. You do it. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Welcome to Grow Her Wings, a podcast by the Malou Project, a 501c3 based in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect girls to aviation. We are your hosts, Jen and Carrie, and we invite you to join us as we meet new people, talk to old friends, and learn new lessons on the path to inspire more of us to grow our wings. Welcome to Grow Her Wings, a podcast brought to you by the Malou Project, a 501c3 based in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect girls to aviation. We are your hosts, Jen and Carrie, and today we have two special guests with us. Hello, Rob, Cindy Lou. How are you today?
I'm good. Good sneeze.
Bless you.
Very good sneeze. Bless you.
We are doing pretty good. Where are we? You know where we are? Where are we?
My grandma's house.
Yeah. We're at Grandpa and Grandma's lake house in Michigan today.
Yeah.
Very nice. It seems like a great place to be in the summer.
It's pretty good. It's oddly hot here. It's not like the normal breeze. I grew up on the lakes on a lake not too far from here. Every summer I spent time with my grandparents, and now my dad is up here on a different lake in a house that actually belonged to my stepmom's family, and that they've now taken over and are setting up for.
Yeah, they died.
Well, they did. They passed away, and so now we are here at the lake house. This is actually our first visit, so we've been.
Yep, I never been here.
No.
They have a tiny house.
It's tiny. It's a small
Yeah.
house. It's a lake house. Yeah. What is what are we doing? Where have we been on this trip so far?
I forgot.
You forgot? Did we go to Minneapolis
Uh-huh.
and Michigan now?
Uh-huh.
Where are we going later today?
Where the
Well, you know where we're going. Who are we going to see later today?
grandma.
We're going to go see our other grandma in New Jersey. So we're doing a 2-week cross-country road trip before she starts school.
And my other grandma has a playroom.
That's right. You have a playroom?
Uh-huh. Remember when we've been there on Christmas?
Yes, we were there for Christmas.
That was so much fun. We were playing presents.
Well, I guess in way of a brief introduction, pretty darn good. Wherever you guys have been.
So, Carrie, we have Rob on today because he's in the gun industry and he has a pretty robust presence there. And his goal is to grow this little girl up to be someone strong and independent. And so, Cindy Lou, do you like shooting guns with your dad?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I saw a video.
Daddy?
Wait a second. Let them ask you a question.
Oh, what?
I saw a video of you with your dad, and it looked like you guys were out on a range, and you were sitting on the ledge, and your dad was standing behind you, and he was showing you how to shoot down range. Is that pretty fun? Is that something you do with your dad?
Yeah. I was shooting an MP5.
That is impressive. I have never fired an MP5.
You did remember it. See, Carrie said she shot an MP5 too.
Cool. But
I know. When did you get it? What did you get it for your birthday? How old were you? Why are you whispering? They can hear you. This is the whole point. We're talking to them too. So when you were 5, you had an MP5. And do you know where the MP5 is from?
where?
It's from where Carrie is. She's in Germany.
Right now. How about that connection? Hey, and Cindy Lou, did Daddy do okay shooting the gun? Did you have to show him some things?
What's the key to the MP5? What do you have to do first? Slap it. Yep.
That was in the video. I saw that. That was impressive.
That's not the only thing you shot, is it, Cindy Lou?
Have you shot other guns?
Yep.
What other guns have you shot?
I don't know.
She's like, it's just cool. It's just what we do.
It is what we do, yeah. Oh, the green square is on us right now because we're talking. And then watch if Carrie says something.
No, wait.
Well, that's what people are saying. Oh, now Jen's laughing. So now it's back to us. So the screen is showing, because other people are going to watch this and they're going to learn about you shooting an MP5 and all the stuff we're talking about. So the green square bounces around for whoever's turn it is to talk.
Why?
Just so we know.
Technology.
Daddy?
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of creepy.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we can, or you know what? Maybe we can change the view. How about this? If we do that. Oh, there. Now we can see Carrie, and Carrie can tell us what's up. Maybe she has some questions for us.
Yeah. Wait,
Okay.
I can still see the square.
Well, it's way up there. It's small now.
But I think it's still gonna be creepy.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry it's a little creepy. You know what? So I don't know if you can see my curtains behind me, but I'm in Germany, but look at how colorful my room is.
Yep.
It's a pretty colorful room. So it's pretty nice. So I've been here for 2 days, riding my bike, exploring, seeing castles. We're right on a river called the Rhine River. Does that sound pretty neat?
Silly. Sing castles. What? Silly.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So what are some of your favorite things to do?
Wow.
Like,
Don't tell her anything.
I don't know.
What's your favorite thing? What did we do? What did we do yesterday at the grandparents' house? What do you like to do every day?
Why isn't the square moving?
Well, now it's just there because she's there because we changed it. Remember? I want you that way. It's less creepy. What's your favorite thing to do when we're traveling around? Where do we like to go?
Dad, I like it when it goes to different people.
Okay, we're going back. We're going back to different people's square.
Cindy Lou, I think you have a future in aviation.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely. Because you notice specific things.
Do you know that? Do you see her outfit? What does it look like? Look close. What do you think she does?
I don't know.
She's a pilot.
Ugh.
She flies the planes. Tell them about flying. How many times do we fly? A lot or a little bit?
Bye.
A lot. Where do we go?
I forgot.
You forgot. Oh, look.
Mm-hmm.
Henry.
There's somebody new here. Henry's here.
Oh,
We will go in the sky.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about flying?
Food.
The food. Where's the food coming from when we're flying?
Forgot.
Do you like the food, buddy?
The box?
The food's pretty good. I'll give you that. That's one of the perks of my job.
I like the cotton candy from the clouds.
Did you fly an airplane up there to visit your grandma?
I didn't fly one. My dad drove me, right?
Oh,
Yeah, we drove this time, yeah.
that must be pretty fun, being on a road trip with your dad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's better, road trips or big airplanes?
Big airplanes.
Why?
Just they go much faster.
Fast is awesome. Guess how fast my airplane goes?
How?
It goes 0.87 Mach, so it almost goes as fast as the speed of sound. So that's about 600 miles per hour. Do you want to fly 600 miles per hour to go on vacation?
But
Yeah.
sometimes my dad and me go on short flights. Right,
Short
Dad?
flights are fun.
Yeah.
Now she's deep in thought. Short flights are fun. You could go on a short flight out in Florida and fly up the coast in a small airplane, see what things look like out the window from up.
I know.
It'd be fun, right? I think it's fun. I like looking out the window.
It's fun.
It is fun. I agree.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool.
So
So is your dad your best friend? One of your best friends?
Mhm. My tiger's name is Oreo.
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 Yes.
I thought it was a lion.
No, its name is Oreo.
Okay, but are you sure it's not a lion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tiger. Named Oreo.
Fair enough. Tiger looks like a lion named Oreo.
That's pretty cool. I like him.
So Rob, you have another daughter, and it was very important for you.
In Nashville.
Yeah, what's that?
Another daughter in Nashville.
Yeah, she lives in Nashville, and
Your sister, right? What's your name?
Christina.
what's Christina do? Does she shoot guns too?
Huh?
Does she shoot guns?
That's enough.
Good to know.
Well, she's never shot with you, right?
Yeah, so I'm giving them now.
Are you giving him a no? She does. She shoots guns. She carries a gun sometimes. What's your niece's name?
Blakely May.
Yeah, she carries a gun to take care of her or Blakely May, and maybe her husband, Blake.
Hi, Oreo.
And maybe could you mind talking a little bit about that? Like why you decided to get your daughters involved in your work and what you do?
Yeah. So you want to go play?
No.
You want to hang out? Okay, I'm going to tell them a little story about Christina.
Okay, I don't want to tell them something.
Okay, tell them quick.
If you tell Oreo your guys' names, he will love you.
Oh, Oreo. If you tell Oreo your names, Oreo will love you.
Oh, well, hello, Oreo. My name is Carrie.
Yeah.
Hi Oreo, my name is Jen.
And Oreo, I think I have green eyes, just like you do. Looks like you have green eyes, Oreo.
What color are your eyes?
I forgot.
Hazel or every color. We got all the colors in there. So Christina, my older daughter's 25, coming up in about a month, and she has a beautiful daughter who's about 3.5. She started shooting at a very young age. You know, I've been involved in the firearms industry. At the time I was doing private security work. When she was born, I was reserve law enforcement. I've been reserve or full-time law enforcement most of my life, most of the last 25 years, and started working full-time in the gun industry around 2001. She was about 6 years old then, and she definitely took to shooting as a recreational activity. You know, it was around all the time. It was something I was doing, and kind of like with Cindy Lou, it's not an everyday, it's not an every trip. She lives in Florida, she lives in Florida and Denver. So Denver is where her mom is. She comes down and visits me in Florida. And where do we go to work every day in Florida? Where's my office?
Range.
At the range. So we're at the range almost every day when we're in Florida, and she has the option of.
We are at the range. Every day.
Yeah, every day. And so we get the option of shooting, and she'll say sometimes she wants to do it, sometimes she doesn't, and it's very much the way I did it the first time around with Christina. It's an option. It's a skill I want them to learn. Obviously, there's some safety issues and things like that I think any parent has to discuss with their kids if there are guns in the house. Storage becomes really important. If you're interested in defensive use of guns, which is primarily what I teach, then we make a distinction between staging and storing. And staging just simply means that the gun is ready for defensive use. It's not, disassembled in one locker with the ammo locked up in another locker on another side of the house. But even though it's ready for quick access, it's still secured from unauthorized use with the kids. mistakes can get made. So teaching kids about safety. It's kind of like if you have a pool, you teach the kids, not to go outside without an adult. You teach them how to behave around the pool. If you have a fireplace, you teach them how to behave around the fireplace. A big dog, whatever that is, you teach them not to touch the stove. With the guns, obviously, a mistake is tragic. So we teach them about the guns too. And it really I've been lucky in that both daughters have been very interested in the shooting as a recreational experience that we share. And as I mentioned, my older daughter has since, gone on to get her concealed carry permit and does, as appropriate, carry the gun to defend herself. She has the gun in the house, staged for quick access. Her husband also has taken classes with me and some of my instructors around the country. And he's skilled also. Their daughter's 3.5. She's been around guns. Obviously 3.5 is a little bit young to really say she's gone shooting. But that's about the time that I think it's appropriate to just, start talking to the kids about the object that is the gun. Because once they're physically strong enough to pull a trigger, physically strong enough, eventually to take a safety off or manipulate, the gun chamber around, which Cindy Lou can't quite do with a 9mm, but with her 22s, she can, as we were talking about with the MP5, she can manipulate that charging handle now. So, she's technically and physically capable of running that gun. That doesn't mean that she's walking around the house with, an MP5 strapped to her chest, but because she might come across one, should I make a mistake or her mom make a mistake or other adults in our environment at the range, for example, it's really important that she respects what the gun is, and at least it's hard to say she has the maturity to really understand the ramifications of an accident, but she understands the concept of negligence or an accident or the things she's not supposed to do. That's one of the things that I teach a lot. We had the 5-year-old here, so I know that probably derailed the intro, but Personal Defense Network is one aspect of my work. A big focus of what I do in the gun rights world focuses on the responsibility that all gun owners have, and obviously if it's training your friends, training your family. For a lot of guys, sort of the cliche is that, you're the gun guy or you're the cop or you're the military guy, and you teach your wife or you teach your daughters how to shoot. There's a lot of female instructors out there too that teach their husbands how to shoot. And like I said, in my daughter's family, she was definitely the shooter, and her husband has come to it later in life.
You hit on something in there about the respect, the importance of at least the introduction and the knowledge that as soon as a child is old enough to have that strength to pull a trigger or to lift a weapon. And that was something I was wondering, have you received any criticism? Because I'm sure that's been somewhat prevalent if people have seen videos of you firing with your daughter, but I think the importance being that respect and that understanding of the firearm for purposes of, I know what it can do and I know the consequences. That's big. That's important.
Yeah, and in that context, it really does stave off any potential criticism. I think any reasoned or sincere criticism gets staved off once you explain the context in which you're doing it. 99% of the time. The fact is, in my world is a little bit insulated from that. In that I'm surrounded by gun industry people, or at least people who know what it is I do and sort of how I approach it. I even published a kid's book earlier this year, designed for parents and adults to talk with kids about guns in a way that isn't sensationalized. It isn't hyperbolic. It's not a propaganda piece for gun ownership. It's not a sensationalist piece on gun violence. And, unfortunately, that's what a lot of people get. I mean, kids are people too. So in our society today, there's a lot of polarization around guns. And that kind of criticism obviously is out there. I think that it's pretty easy for me to throw the card down on the table that says I've been doing this for 20 years and I've successfully raised a daughter around guns. I'm doing it differently this time, quite honestly. My attitude towards staging and storage and sort of how that all works with the friends coming over and everything else. It's different now than it was in the 90s. It's different now for me in my 40s than it was in my 20s. But that same idea of it being important for them to understand it, has always been part of it. So it's relatively easy for me to deal with that criticism. I definitely can see where other parents would have a harder time with that if they're not in the industry, if they're amateurs or hobbyists and they're trying to figure out how to navigate that space. It's a little more difficult. My company, I.C.E. training company, is actually my training arm that puts on classes and develops curriculum for instructors that I certify, as well as other organizations or military law enforcement units. One of the courses we've developed is called the Family Firearms Safety Course. And it was really designed for families that were considering bringing a gun into the home. So imagine a family with a couple kids that neither adults are really shooters. Maybe they had some military experience, or they grew up with guns, but they don't own guns. And what they want to do is come to the gun industry and say, what are the best practices? How is this even reasonable? You know, I've talked to one neighbor and they think I'm, you know, basically putting my kid in mortal danger. I talked to another neighbor and they think it's ridiculous. We don't have a gun to protect our family. How do I navigate this space? And one of the really gratifying things for me as someone, you know, a gun rights advocate that tries to make the gun community as good as it can be, is that about 75–80% of our students in that class are actually families that already own guns that just want to spot check. They want to get the latest information. They want to make sure they are doing it right, which really is, it may seem a little backwards, but I know how many people in the gun industry historically haven't taken their responsibility to train and their responsibility to prevent unauthorized access seriously enough. And we do have tragedies. We have kids that get killed. We have kids that shoot other kids. We have parents that are, you know, quote unquote, cleaning their guns and the gun goes off. And, you know, there's tragedies inside of the family. So anytime gun owners are raising their hand and saying, you know, I may not know enough about this, especially when kids are involved, it's incredibly important. And it's like a $75 course for, you know, bring the whole family and come to the class. The kids get to shoot, the adults shoot. We separate the kids from the adults and we let the adults ask the instructors, all of whom are parents with kids for this phase of the instruction, the questions that they have. And some of those questions are, how do I deal with it when the neighbor criticizes me? How do I deal with it now when I go to social media with a picture of me and my kid at the range and I got to worry about, you know, somebody at the school making a fuss about my kid having access to a gun, even though it was safe and supervised and, you know, even in a training setting. So these are awkward political questions, but they will never trump the issue of making sure your kids are safe. You know, there's a fishing rod behind me. I'm not a big fisherman, but my dad fishes out in the lake. There's a fishing rod behind me. There's a hook here. You know, if I don't educate my kid about this hook, they can, unquote, you know, whatever, get an infection. So it's just a safety issue that to me as a parent is self-evident that we need to address. And it's really a shame that some people might not be addressing it because of the politics or that criticism fear.
You answered my next question, which was basically going to be, what advice would you give some of those parents that aren't in the gun industry, who people don't recognize as, oh, he's obviously doing it safe? What is that advice you would give those parents that want to be better as a family with their firearms and move forward with introducing their children to safe use of firearms? So I think you mostly wrapped it up, but what would that one piece of advice for how to start would you give them?
It's really important to get that instructor, get that third party expert in there. You know, I use the example with me. I try to send my family members to other instructors. Obviously, I don't just go to the phone book, right? And but I've got plenty of certified instructors that are world class. These people teach literally all over the world.
Wait, what's a phone book? Sorry.
Phone book? It's like I'm sure there's one in this lake house somewhere. I don't just go to the Google for you kids. I don't just go to the Googles and look for an instructor, right? So it's relatively easy for me to say that, but at the same time, there are certified instructors all around the country. There's ranges with range safety officers. Not only is it there's an emotional piece, right? For any family member trying to teach another family member, you know, the joke I always make is if I'm trying to teach you how to, you know, protect yourself in a life and death situation with a lethal tool, but you also know that I can't pick up my socks from the bedroom floor, then how seriously are you going to take me, right? So introducing a child to a third party creates that kind of air of respect. Like, I mean, even, you know, my daughter, you know, recognizing the epaulets on a uniform, you know, as a symbol of authority. And, you know, when we're on a plane, she always says hi to the pilot, and there is a respect. The uniform that the stewardess wears, the same thing. There's something about that that it doesn't matter what the person does in the rest of their life, they are the authority there. And I think kids especially will respond to that. So having that person reinforce the lessons that the parent is trying to teach, or set the example, or get the attention of the child. One of the things that we tell the parents is, look, one of the reasons where the kids are out shooting, right? We got the parents alone in the classroom, the kids are shooting with another instructor. We tell them, listen, you're going to go in there and shoot. And when you're shooting with us, we're going to make sure that you follow our rules. Said, quite honestly, if 3 weeks from now you go to the range with your kids and your kids correct you because you've been doing it this way for 30 years, but your kids say, hey, remember instructor Rob said, do it this way. Like, that's a win for us, because I don't know you people. I don't know if you're safe or not. I don't know what your training is, right? So it's a nice spot check for the parents too, to be in a structured environment and not just, go out in the woods and shoot up against the hill. A lot of us learn to shoot that way, but the gun industry has changed a lot in the last, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And it's there's a lot of opportunities to do it better.
That's good. I think that's great advice.
So you hit on something, Rob, with the word responsibility. I think that, I've been kind of rolling this around in my head a little bit, that people are kind of using their fears as reasons not to either explore those things or introduce those things to their children. And it really is kind of a responsibility for us as adults, especially as parents, to ensure that our kids are safe and understand how some of those more advanced things work and operate. So I thought that was very intriguing.
It's a great, it's a great failure right now of our society, because the guns are so political. And one of the things I'll use as an example of how it's too politicized, as are a lot of things, I think, is the education community. Overall, the education community, it's a sort of a cliche for a reason, right? The educational community leans left. Leans pro-gun control, leans anti-gun. We know that guns aren't allowed in schools. You hear, guys of a certain age, including mine, and maybe a little bit younger, even say, I remember when I used to, go hunting on the way to school, and we had pickup trucks in the window in the back of the truck. And, I graduated from high school in Georgia, and that certainly was the case, right? Now, I also went to high school before I moved in New Jersey, and that was not the case. We didn't have any, guns in the back of the pickup trucks in New Jersey, but I did grow up shooting there, right? I grew up in the sand pits shooting, and but my mom had to sign for my center fire ammunition when I was, under 18. I mean, so the laws around the country are different, but the gun conversation in our country is pretty much the same in the educational community. And what I'll ask teachers, I'll ask people in that environment is, well, why would you be against gun safety classes? And what's it come down to? How could you possibly want guns in school? Guns are incredibly dangerous. Why would you want kids around guns? Kids could get hurt with guns. It's like, all right, well, but I mean, we teach about fire, right? We teach about unprotected sex. We teach about drug use or drug abuse of prescription drugs. We teach about pollution in schools and the damage that can do. We teach about healthy eating habits. Like everything that's dangerous to kids, our society usually feels like it's an obligation, right? Even when it's controversial. You talk about like safe sex practices is very controversial for some parents, that the school's going to address that issue that they feel should be kept in the family. Mm-hmm. But it's addressed because it's that important. It's that important because, that 13-year-old that gets pregnant, that's a life-altering event. We probably should address this before that point, right, for these kids. So why aren't we talking about guns? Because you just told me guns are incredibly dangerous. You address everything else that's dangerous, even some controversial things for kids. Why aren't we talking about guns? And there is no real answer. The only answer is politics, and that's not a good enough answer to not try to do everything we can to prevent these accidents. One of the obligations we have is that guns exist. Whether you think they should or not doesn't really matter. Right? Your kid can go to your neighbor's house and can encounter a gun and should know what to do if they do encounter it, which generally is just leave it alone. Don't touch it, right? Make sure parents, say something to parents. One thing that comes up a lot, and actually a friend of mine who used to work in the gun control world, and he sort of had an epiphany in terms of the sincerity maybe of some of the people he was working with. And he realized that working against gun owners probably wasn't the best way to prevent tragedies and accidents with guns. It was probably working with gun owners and through education and advocacy and responsibility campaigns and things like that. One of the campaigns that he had started when he was sort of still on the other side, so to speak, was one designed to encourage parents to ask other parents if they had guns in the home. right? So your kid's going to go spend the night at another kid's house. You just ask the parent, among other things you might ask, do you guys have any guns in the house? And then obviously the follow on from there is, well, how do you store them? Do your kids have access to them? Are they out in the open? That kind of a thing. And I think that's a very healthy conversation. I encourage gun owning parents to embrace that question. I encourage gun owning parents, because the problem is, because it came from the anti-gun side, a lot of gun people are like, oh, it's none of their business, I'm not going to tell them. You should want to know. Like, how can we as the gun people not be the most educated and the most aware that, do you have guns in the house, and how do you store them, and are they out in the open, and do your kids have access to them? They're probably really important questions when you have a 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13-year-old going from one house to another. If you're going to ask about the pool, if you're going to ask about the alcohol being left out, if you're going to ask about all these other safety and security issues, why wouldn't the gun owner want to have that discussion? Because if nothing else, as the responsible gun owner, maybe you can change the behavior inside of that family. Oh yeah, we just leave them out, no big deal. Well, I got this quick access safe. I picked it up at, the sporting goods shop last week. It's only $200 and it holds all the guns. I can push the buttons. It opens really fast if I need the gun. But the kids can't get to it, and if the house gets broken into, the bad guy can't get to it, and all that stuff. I mean, having that conversation is incredibly important, and that all comes back to that responsibility piece. Rights come with responsibilities, all of our rights. And the Second Amendment, because it's under such attack from the outside, the gun community sometimes wants to not avoid the responsibilities. I don't think that's fair, but what we definitely don't want to talk about the responsibilities as much, because every time we admit that our kids could be in danger if the guns aren't stored properly, and if we aren't responsible owners, we sort of give ammunition, figuratively, to the other side that wants to attack. Even gun owners admit that guns can be dangerous for kids in the house. Well, of course, we'd be fools not to, but it's a politically charged environment.
So yeah, and the politically charged, and something that Carrie and I were talking about before we got online with you, was the question that she gets sometimes from people, because it's essentialized, it's sexualized in a way sometimes about gun ownership, is not presuming who the gun owners are or not, right? Carrie, I mean, the questions you would get, and maybe that doesn't happen to you so much, Rob, in your world, but Carrie, in the military side of things, in our world, what questions you got, Carrie?
So some of the questions I get, do you feel like you've given up a bit of your femininity by being a gun owner? No. Why are we making these assumptions on who gun owners are? It's kind of, and I wanted to say that, and that kind of leads me into what I liked when I started reading about you, is you've raised one daughter and you're raising a second daughter without those limits. It's an option for them. So you're raising them without limits of putting them in a particular category. If they're interested in something, you're going to try to find a way to introduce them, is the impression that I'm getting. If they're not interested, you're not going to make them be introduced. So I think there's a bit of an assumption of who a gun owner is, who's what type of demographic. So me getting asked, are you giving up some of your femininity being a gun owner or enjoying firing firearms? I didn't grow up hunting, but it wasn't because I didn't enjoy the idea of hunting. I just didn't like the all-day aspect of it. So that's where I go, I definitely didn't give up my femininity, because I didn't want to be out all day early in the morning sitting in a blind to hunt, but I'll go to a range any day.
Yeah,
so honored that a little bit of the assumptions of who a gun owner is, and
there's a lot there. I will say that the whole thing with gender roles, right? Like masculine and feminine in Western culture, and sort of the expectations and what that's all about is a big package to jump into, right? Specifically to guns, the gun, I think it was the Washington Post or Washington Times did a little mini documentary. People can find it online, talking about toxic masculinity and how it might play a role in mass shootings. And they came and interviewed me on the topic from the standpoint of a firearms rights advocate and firearms instructor. And we talked a lot more about these issues of gender roles than we did about anything else, because I think it's really important to understand that gender roles, as we understand them, or as we talk about them, I think colloquially, really don't hold up in practice, especially not in 2020, when you have so many single dads and single moms, right? I have to figure out, I have to be able to talk about, lions and tigers and ponytails and, all this girl stuff as I single dad around the planet with her, exposing her to all these opportunities. Like you said, like, hey, do you want to try this? Do you want to go check out a volcano? Do you want to fly? Do you want to go have sushi? Do you want a squid salad? Whatever, like whatever it is we're doing that's different today that a lot of kids don't get to do, or parents might not be able to present the opportunity to their kids to do. Like, I cherish all of those things as a single parent, right? As someone who's running around the world with a girl, I can't limit myself to only girl stuff. And I certainly can't not expose her to that. What I think is important about the way the gun falls into that, the way firearms or hunting falls into that, is if we as a society have been rightfully encouraging women to be providers, to be successful, to be workers, to be protectors, to be, humans, complete humans. And if we as a society have told men, like, hey, you need to not be, such a jackass all the time, and you need to soften up a little bit and be complete humans in a whole bunch of other ways, I think that those are super healthy things. But again, there's always these like hot button issues where, well, not that, not quite that, not quite man bun, right? Or not quite to carrying a gun. Why would you carry a gun? Doesn't that take away some of your femininity? Well, if you're going to be a powerful human being capable of taking care of yourself, and the gun can be a means to do that, why would you ostracize that from your potential world, right? And so it's the same thing with my daughters. My older daughter, Christina, you look at her Instagram, you're not going to find a more, feminine, girly girl human being in 92% of her social media and interaction. I mean, she's literally a model. That's what she does full time. She's got a side business as a wedding party planner with a friend of hers. So like, she throws parties, plans weddings, and shows off clothes and helps people, the clothes manufacturers and the boutiques sell these clothes. And she does it as a beautiful young woman who's incredibly strong and incredibly confident. But you might find her in that blind at 6 a.m. too, right? And she has an amazing husband, and they're a wonderful couple, and they're raising this daughter. But if she needed to, she could do that without him, and if he needed to, he could do that without her. Like, they have both sides of that equation, and they work really well together. But both of them are independently capable of doing a lot of the things that I think traditionally, if you want to say that, like, you go back to some 1950s. Sitcom snapshot of what men and women do, they overlap those roles. And, I obviously have to overlap some of those roles as a single parent as well. I think well-rounded humans don't give up their masculinity or their femininity by rolling over to some of those other activities, or even at least understanding them and learning about them. I think we expand ourselves as human. And if nothing else, to me, I think that it empowers the moments of femininity that much more when you know that it's not your only option, right? And I think for a guy, you're that much more masculine if you can also understand and empathize with and or participate in the softer pieces of life. So I understand the question. Like, I understand why people might respond to someone who is doing something they're not comfortable with, but the idea that it's somehow locked into your bathroom you choose, I just don't get.
That's a good way of putting it. And Jen and I were discussing a little earlier as well, how it seems, and I'm hoping, listening to you and listening to some other people, it's been great, that maybe the time has passed for this, but we tend to raise our children and treat people in categories. We want to put everybody in columns. You are this, you are not that. You should do this, you should not do that. When really I use the term a Venn diagram, even that's not right, because you're only looking at spaces that might overlap when you draw one of those. But we can be so much of all those individual different pieces and parts. So this is one of those things that I think it's not a guns are bad or guns are good argument. It's kind of rolled up. You can have feelings about all of it, all wrapped up in that Venn diagram, when everything where it overlaps, and that's okay. So it was refreshing listening to the way that you described that, because I'm finding still, and maybe it's just the people that I've been around lately, but it's a lot of that category. Do this, don't do that. Be this, don't be that.
Yeah, there is a caricature of the gun owner, right? And probably there are aspects of my life where certainly, I'm sitting here with a thin blue line America flag in a fishing camp in Michigan. Obviously, I've got guns around, right? On the other hand, the if somebody saw me 3 days ago walking around Chicago, they would probably don't think I'm carrying a gun, right? And it depends on what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, whether I look like a gun owner or not. And I think the problem with that is that we have this caricature of what a gun owner is, right? There's over 110 million American gun owners. That's well over a third of the adult population. Every time the studies are done, it's somewhere between 40 and 50% of American households have guns in them, right? There's the idea that it's just this, old white guy that goes out hunting in the morning and then, carries a gun around at work all day and goes and shoots trap in the evening with his friends and drinks some beer and then goes home. It's such a self-evident fallacy that it's amazing to me, honestly, like how much it pervades the psyche. And probably even inside of the gun community, we have this issue, right? What I talk about, we did a rally last year in Washington, D.C. We had 30 speakers on November 2nd up on a stage in front of the U.S. Capitol on the West Lawn. We intend to do it again this year on October 24th in Washington, D.C. We'll see what happens with the election and civil unrest in Corona, but we've still got our permits at this point. And the importance to me was thought diversity. We had 30 speakers, and I wanted all of them to present a different 4 to 6 minute speech on how they felt about the Second Amendment, why the individual right to keep and bear arms should be celebrated and should be defended, and why it's important to them as an individual. And if I showed you the picture of the 30 speakers, there's an incredible amount of superficial diversity. And I mean, it looks like an incredibly diverse crowd, from Latina to Asian from Northern California, who married he and his husband were supporting the event. Literally a homosexual Asian guy, Latina who moved in from Central America, from a country that is now essentially a failed state, that came here and found the Second Amendment as a gift. We've got some of the old white guys were there, guys who were second and third generation in the gun industry, inner city guys who do work with people who may or may not even own their guns legally, but they're learning safety and they're learning responsibility. They're learning how to be legal gun owners if they want to be, from black guys from the inner city. I mean, we've got every possible snapshot of human being on this stage, big, small, whatever. But what was really important to me wasn't that snapshot of superficial diversity. It was the diversity of thoughts behind their speeches, behind what brought them to the Second Amendment, right? Military veterans that realized that once they left the military and got home, they had to learn all new skills and all new firearms and all new thought processes around defensive tactical actions, because now it's just, them with a Glock and a hoodie with their daughter at the mall is completely different than, being with a platoon with a company ready to go to battle with, air support and communications and a plan and a known enemy. You're doing it. And these things are very, very different. And hearing people talk about that, hearing people talk about, the crime that they were victim to because they didn't have a gun and they had been, sort of not raised around guns and raised to think that guns weren't for them. They weren't in that category. It's such a thing that's such a travesty about it is that it's like I said, self-evident that with 110 million gun owners in America, they can't all be me. They can't all be, the gray-bearded white guy with the gun that grew up with them since he was a kid. There must be other people out there. And especially in 2020, when we've seen record gun sales every single month, we know that there's a lot of new gun owners out there. And the trick is to get them educated and get them safe and get them responsible as gun owners. I don't even care if they become gun rights advocates or whatever. They could be closeted gun owners for all I care, as long as that closet is safe and secure from the kids getting to the guns, right? And the only way we change that is by getting rid of this idea that, a woman can't go to the range by herself, or a black guy can't go to the range without getting sideways glances from the old white guy behind the counter. It's not what happens. But I think it's what a lot of people from outside of the gun community think would happen or think is happening. And that's what we need to break that stereotype. Obviously you guys with your project and with the whole idea of women pilots and women getting involved in aviation, whether it's in the military or not, like that is a stereotype you're trying to break down, right? Jen, I love what you said. I heard you say in one of the other podcasts, this idea that, when people are like, oh, you're woman pilot who's been in combat, and you're like, yeah, they let men do it too. It's a good, just mental smack in the head, right? It's like, why did you think this was a thing? And mocking it, I think, is a great way to let people realize just how ridiculous it is a statement to make in 2020. And we get that a lot in gun work too.
It's that non-immediate
it's that non-defensive immediate response to make people think about what they just said.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I always enjoy it.
And I think, and so Rob, I mean, this is like a big reason why you're here and why you're talking is, I know I have many friends that are female that are scared to death of guns. They're like, oh, I would never do that. You know, you do it because you have military background and you understand it and you're not scared of it. And there is intimidation there, right? A little bit if you are unfamiliar with anything. So I'm really grateful that you're here to talk about it because it is really important and it feeds into so many other things, just like flying, where you build confidence, you learn defense, you learn all the ways that you are a stronger person than you ever thought you were through manipulation of a weapon that has some power to it and consequence. And I think that's a big thing for Carrie and I, and we're really grateful that you're here for us today.
Yeah, that's huge. With looking at, the MALU being a person's social environment, it's gun advocacy and gun ownership and gun safety works into that changing that society of what they believe, what the norms are, instead of it being so politicized, which a lot of the things that get those emotional responses are because they're politicized, versus really going in there, changing the MALU and understanding the rest of the thought processes, the rest of the intent behind a lot of these things. So I appreciate you sharing that with us and that you share it with your daughters.
Yeah, it's just, I can't overstress how important it is. It's really not even about the gun, right? The gun is the means to personal defense, and no one, I mean, international law, you can go to the most, liberal, progressive European country you want. The right to defend oneself, right? It's a self-evident human right. It is existential, whether you think it's a God-given right or a natural right or common law, whatever secular or religious or spiritual piece you want to put around it. Humans obviously have the right to defend themselves. And the gun is a means to do that under certain situations, but by no means is it the perfect tool for all those situations. So what I try to empower in people and where I try to find common ground with people, I don't care if you're anti-gun, you're not anti-defense, right? I mean, you don't want everyone to just be a victim. And I get it. You might wish the world didn't have violence. You might wish there wasn't evil. You might believe that evil's never going to find you, but you have to admit that it's out there. And if it's out there and you can, drink water, you can hydrate to keep a headache away and to stay healthy. If you can take vitamins, if you can eat healthy food, if you can lock your doors, if you can put an alarm system, you can have cameras, if you can learn unarmed defense, if you can follow crime trends that you might avoid them, maybe eventually, and the knowledge for how to use it, having it accessible or even carrying it in public might be reasonable. Like if we can just get there, I think we can get past the idea that this gun is this talisman of evil. It's really important for people to understand where this comes from, right? If it's just somebody pounding on the table saying shall not be infringed and quoting the founding fathers, probably out of context, that we're not getting anywhere. There needs to be a real conversation, and that conversation does, as you said, start with the intention and the ideas behind why this is important, right? I mean, I'm sure that you guys as pilots want to, this is your thing, this is your niche. My niche with my daughters is guns, but I try to expose them to everything else. You're doing a project to encourage females to get into aviation, but I don't think you're going to be sad if that exposure to the concept of aviation and the opportunities of aviation lead a woman to be strong and powerful and successful somewhere else, and they credit you guys. You're not going to be mad that they didn't fly, and instead they, do submarines, right?
Right. Well, Jen and I talk about that a lot. We just think there are lessons that can be learned that go well beyond the flight deck when it comes to flying an airplane, as far as dealing with emergencies, dealing with changes, dealing with rapid changes, and just that different perspective of being up there in the air, looking outside and going, if I can do this, what else can I do?
Right, exactly.
It's huge. And if they don't become pilots, that's okay. They'll go on and do great things somewhere else. The lessons they learned from those couple of days, or even if they learn their initial rating, and that's something they also do.
I agree 1,000%. I've never went all the way through to getting my pilot's license, but I have been up in the plane and landed it by myself, did the solo thing when I was in high school, when I was going through, training, and never went all the way. I ended up going to college and getting up busy in Vermont and didn't quite finish. And it's always something I've looked back on and said, I should have done that. But knowing that I at least did that part where I was actually in control of the plane and put it down on the ground, got it up, and then, which was a little bit easier, put it down was a little bit more interesting, but it's huge. And any human being has that experience. I hope that I'm giving people some piece of that when they learn how to control and load the gun and realize that they could interact with this thing that maybe an hour ago they thought was, way too dangerous or way too intimidating or way too technical or way harder than it actually was to do. So that epiphany moment, that driving a race car, whatever it may be, going scuba diving, skydiving, flying a plane, any of these types of moments that, and again, we go back to the daughters, like every single time I see my daughters do those kinds of things, and my older daughter continues to do them. She just jumped off a plane for the first time about a month ago with her husband. Anytime I see them doing that, it's very gratifying that they take on challenges and that they're not intimidated by the conceptual, right? There's things to be worried about. There's things to be intimidated by. There's things to take seriously, but they don't let that stop them from figuring out how to solve those problems and confront those things.
I just heard a quote the other night about the biggest rewards are right after you fight that fear, right? Like that's where the biggest success and reward is. But I just want to say thank you all. I'd like to kind of wrap this up if that's okay. Thank you, Rob, for joining us, and thank you, Carrie, for joining us from Cologne. Is that where you're at? In Germany?
Yes, Germany. I keep wanting to say Stuttgart, but that's just because of living there before. But yeah, Cologne, Germany.
Awesome. Rob, is there anything else you want to say before we kind of close out? Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. The opportunity to share what we're doing is really important to me. If people are interested in learning anything, if you've got that gun in the house and you don't know what I was talking about when I said quick access safe, personaldefensenetwork.com has hundreds of free videos. My older daughter, Christina, is in some of them. I'm putting out safety tips for guns when it comes to women in high school and college, safety tips that have nothing to do with guns, just personal defense in general. So we really cover everything from, again, the locks on the door to the firearms and the gear and all that stuff. So personaldefensenetwork.com is the place to find all of that information. If people are interested in the politics side, gunrights.info is an information site that we put together under Second Amendment organization that really just lays out the positions we have and talks about things like background checks and mandatory training and where those things kind of fit into the puzzle from a gun rights advocacy standpoint. So again, all that information's out there for free. If I can do anything for any of your viewers, listeners, obviously any of the projects you guys are doing, let me know. We have a team of instructors around the country. So, when you guys are ready to branch out from the aviation for women to the introducing girls to guns, I've got the team that can help you.
Outstanding.
Awesome. And we'll look forward to hopefully having Christina on at some point.
That'd be great. I did give her a warning order. I told her that she may get an email or a text message from you guys talking about her stuff, because again, I think she really is a great example of someone who's entrepreneurial, who embraces life and challenges and is capable of defending herself and taking down a deer or a turkey and cooking it for dinner the next day. But at the same time, you're not going to find a more feminine girl worried about her makeup and her hair and everything else for the modeling. So she's probably a good addition to the lineup.
That's excellent. It goes back to it's thought diversity.
Yeah, for sure.
We have what's expected, but we're all diverse in our thoughts and our goals and our dreams.